Hi, it's Ian, and welcome back to my 30 Days of Taiko Skills. Today is day 25, and I'm talking about Nori. So, in Japanese, the word Nori, depending on the way it's written, can have various meanings such as pressed seaweed, rule, glue. But in the case regarding the way we use it for music, it's the version that means ride. And within that version, I see in the dictionary a few different takes on it. And one of them has to do with rhythm and feeling, or almost like the mood of the music. So I've noticed that outside of Japan, the word nori is not very commonly heard in terms of the taiko uh, vocabulary. Um, One of the ways that I would normally talk about this concept would be just saying the word groove or feel, or even swing. So it's similar to me, but if you say nori, I feel like it might be slightly different in the way that people in Japan use this word in regarding music. There's a certain kind of just like the word means ride. It's this idea that the rhythm is so infectious that you can't help but ride along on this rhythm. And um, it might be sort of an abstract concept and quite subjective depending on who's listening to it and who's playing this music. But I think one way to simplify it is if it's if the music makes you tap your foot, if it makes you move your head a little bit, like in the beat, if it makes you want to get up and dance, these are all things that is probably indicative of good nori or good feel. So, how do we study this concept? How do we tap into this idea and hopefully make our playing, uh, sound more in closer to the kind of nori feel that we're looking for? And to me, the number one thing to do is to listen to recordings, uh, check out the most grooving musicians that you know. So you can also get suggestions. This is another great thing, is to seek out people who have more experience than you and ask them, who do you think have the best nori? Which taiko players do you think uh, really tap into this concept of nori when they're playing? Which groups do you feel like have a really good feeling of nori? And most importantly, maybe to me, which styles of traditional music do you feel like can really demonstrates this feeling of nori that I can hear immediately and maybe try to emulate? So in my case, I hear examples of nori most often in edobayashi, and I've studied many different old recordings, plus uh, seen live performances and checked out videos and any uh, anywhere I can find recordings of edobayashi of every age from now as far back as there was recordings, and also study with teachers. All these things help me figure out what edobayashi nori is, which kinds of um, who has good nori, or which recordings have good nori, which versions have that, and I can start to listen to it, study it, and understand um, how it goes. And if I play along with that, there's more of a chance that it'll become internalized. Um, Another way to think about this concept is more in the groove setting. So if you're a drum set player, one of the earliest things that you're taught is your right hand hi-hat or ride cymbal part. If it's not consistent, if you're not able to keep a straight beat, if you're playing eighth notes, for example, if the spacing and the sound is not consistent, it's very difficult to make it groove. So this doesn't mean it has to be metronomic. It doesn't mean that all the hits are the same volume. None of that is really the key. The key is it consistent? Is it something that the listener can listen to and can start to trust? Because this forward motion is something that you feel like you can get on and ride along with it. Something that is inconsistent, if I play a beat that has is inconsistent in terms of just the feel of it, less something like this. Okay, so it's basically eighth notes, but you can probably hear that it's not that consistent. It's very hard to get on that and ride along on that because there's no sense of consistency where you can start to trust that okay, now that I can move my foot to it, it must be trustworthy enough that I can continue to do that instead of being stopped in the middle. And in order to develop that consistency, of course, using metronome and drum machine apps like I've talked about before, and really paying attention to the details of how you're able to keep it steady, getting more control of that will probably help uh, in your sense of groove. But it doesn't really end there because you might still be playing everything very accurately, but there's still some it factor missing out of that. You might be missing something that allows that beat to have this kind of forward motion and life to it. And again, the only way to really tap into that is to listen to and be inspired by playing along with drummers and other musicians who you think uh, exemplify that concept. So, to me, and pretty much any other drummer out there who hears somebody like Steve Gadd, um, he can play something for 3 beats and it's already a groove that you can just ride along. He's one of the most trustworthy in terms of consistent feel out of anybody. And that's a big reason why he's such a legend. It's not so much about the technique. It's just that as soon as he starts playing, you feel like, oh, I can fully trust this groove. He's not going to change tempo. He's not going to be inconsistent with those hits. It's just very, very comforting to ride along to a Steve Gadd groove, for example. So you can find this in every genre. It doesn't even have to be popular music. It can be in um, any style, any genre, anywhere in the world. You'll find examples that are displaying really good nori. So there is some technique that you can help and kind of get you going in the right direction in terms of control. But in the end, I think what we need to do is to be checking out these other inspiring musicians and trying to emulate that as much as possible. And perhaps use these words such as nori, groove, feel. Become more conscious of using them in your own practice and communicating to other people or in your rehearsals. The more we start to talk about this, the more everybody's more in tuned and have this as a value that becomes hopefully turns into something that makes the music better and better. So, kind of a difficult concept to speak clearly about, but I think it's one of the most important things there is. The musical feel and the sound, those are the two most important things to me. So it's always good to talk about them and maybe share ideas with other people about this topic and yeah, see where that takes you. That's a little bit about Nori, and I'll see you on the next one.